Hello everybody, welcome back to the Fruin Driving Experience. This is race 3. This is the makeup race that got postponed because of weather, and it was at Lake Garnett. So let's talk about it. Lake Garnett is a really small, tight, and very slick track that I'd never raced before, so it was really kind of fun to get used to it. It was a 3-day weekend extravaganza that between the racing and the camping and everything else that went on, it was a long weekend. Like, it was a long, hot, sweaty weekend. But we got through it. So, showed up Friday, and we needed to do some test laps, try to figure out the track. And it was an ice rink out there. There was no rubber down, and the times that I was pulling in, I'm like, dude, this is nowhere near what I need to be. My times were absolutely horrible. So then I called around, called Lucas, asked, like, what gearing should I be running for this? And found out I was like 4 or 5 teeth off on the rear of what I should be running. And I could tell because my RPMs weren't even close to even hitting the limiter. So I knew something wasn't right out of the gate. So swapped up gears and went back out and ran faster times, but still, from what I understood, we were 2.5 seconds off of where we should have been. So I had a lot of work to do and somewhere to make up some ground. So did a lot of practice, just over and over and over on Friday. And we got down to some times that we needed to get to, and I felt a lot better about it. So it was a 2-day event. Saturday was the Garnett shootout, and the way, it wasn't a points race. It was a fun little race of basically, we did P-pick, you went out, and how you finish determined how many points you get. And then heat 2, I think was the inverse. I still didn't understand how it all worked, but I think it was basically the inverse of where you started. So if you started P1, which I did, you start at the back of heat 2. And then the further back you are, the more points you have, and the less points you have, the further in the front you start in the feature. Well, unfortunately, there was a hang-up, and I ended up getting a bent steering rod and a bent kingpin. Luckily, the spindle was okay, the chassis was okay. Wasn't a good day on Saturday, but I started in 12th in the feature and just worked my way back to 6th. So that was the best we could do. No big deal, nothing for video to show. It was a fun little shootout race. So kind of an interesting day on Saturday. Huge shout out to David and Lucas. They came in clutch, helping me out so much with the steering shaft and getting the car aligned and everything fixed and back together. Huge shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for helping out. Otherwise, I'd have been dead in the water, honestly. And the fact that they had spare parts for me was really neat too. So again, that comes back to in the earlier videos of why I talked about getting a newer kart. That's why, because when things break, parts availability might not be on hand if you go with an older chassis. So I'm super happy I went with a newer chassis because of this. So race day, went out for practice. Times were good. There's nothing really special that happened. No big crashes or super passes or anything like that. It was a very good day of racing, but I will say that starting the final, I started P2 because that's where I always start, I guess. So on this track, P2 on the outside lane, I guess anytime. I don't know why I haven't gotten good at starting at the outside lane. I don't know. You'd think I'd be good at this by now, starting on the outside, but I'm still not. And I think it's just because being on the outside is not a good place to be. So I start P2, come around the corner. It's not a good corner to be on the outside. I mean, it never is. But I still haven't figured that part out yet, obviously. So I come around the corner, and I end up dropping a spot. The guy in 3rd place, I forgot his name already, and I apologize. Super cool dude. He showed up. He hasn't raced with the series. It's my understanding he's a road racer. Really kind of neat that he showed up. It's really fun to have different people show up. And it was 1, 2, and me. Now I was holding on with him, and in the first 3rd lap or 4th lap or something like that, I had a problem where I locked the brakes up. It slammed the car a little bit to the right, basically Tokyo drifting, and I went into the grass, and unfortunately that meant that Aaron got around me. So if you're not following, Aaron and I are in this battle of 1st and 2nd when it comes to the point championship, and I love it. I think it's awesome. I think it's so cool that we're so close together and we go back and forth like this. And so Aaron got in front of me. I was like, all right, I've got some work to do. So from past races, I learned that I need to just keep my composure, not go into chase mode, and continue to do what I do. And eventually, if I can get a good run on him, then I will get a pass. And after following a couple laps, I knew where I could get him at, and I knew where he could pull away from. So I made sure to pay extra attention to where he was pulling away and try to zone in on what I was doing wrong to try to not let him get away. And on one lap, coming out of the turn before the big straightaway, I knew where he could get me a little bit on that. So I made extra careful attention, as close as I was to him, to really hit the apex just right. And I got a run on him. Now, here's the problem I have with these GoPro cameras and their video image stabilization. I have to explain the video because the way the video looks is not accurate of how I was driving, and I need to defend my driving. So if you watch the GoPro videos, especially the front camera, what it does is the camera will try to overcorrect the way that it looks and sees. So if you're turning right, it'll try to turn even further right. It's really weird and hard to explain. But basically what happened was I had an inside look on a turn, and Aaron and I were right with each other. He might have been just a little bit ahead of me. But basically my apex to go into the turn was god awful. It was one of those things where either he was going to let me have the spot or he was not going to let me have the spot. And either way, it was just racing. It was part of it. So the problem I have with the way the video shows is that because I didn't have the right apex, I had to really come down on the brakes and slam on the brakes, and it slung the rear out, which then the camera overcompensates for me sliding the rear out, and it turns the camera back. Well, when the cart stabilizes and goes straight again, the camera angle shoots back really fast. So what it looks like on the video is that I turned right and then just came back into Aaron. And dude, Aaron, I can tell you, I did not do that at all. I kept maintaining the roll the best I could of the apex, but I never intentionally turned back left to just hit you. That is not at all what happened, but the video shows it that way, and I want to be very clear that is not what happened. So the apex was not good. Hit the brakes a little hard. The rear end came a little loose to the right, and when the cart straightened back out, Aaron had a much better apex than I did, and I was angled not very well, and I bumped Aaron, and that slowed both of us down and allowed 2 more races to go by us. So I needed to be very clear about that, Aaron, that was not an intentional. That was just racing. I even talked to him after. You know, I hate bumping somebody and feeling like that was an intentional. Like, I didn't want it to be intentional. So even after the race, I went and talked to him and said, dude, you know, that turn that we got connected, and he basically stopped me. He said, you were trying to take an aggressive inside line. There's nothing wrong with that. And I could not be happier with the way that he responded, because he understood that had I been reversed, had I been in Aaron's position and he been in my position and the exact same thing happened, me personally, I would think the same thing. Dude, that is just racing. You got sideways with me, or you got side by side with me on the straight, so you had a line, I had to hold that line. Like, that's racing. And I am so happy that as a racer, he recognizes competition and things like that. It's just, I'm so grateful to be with a group of guys that understands racing. And so Aaron, thank you so much for being very understanding. But yeah, no, I think we can both agree, both Aaron and I, that was just, it was racing, and it is what it is. So that stuck Aaron and I back a little bit. He got in front of me after the little hang up, and so it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I was 6th at that point. So Aaron gets around Alex, and now I'm behind Alex, paying attention to what he's doing in the race. So I'm trying to learn to figure out where he's strong at and where I can get him at. And there's definitely instances where you can see where I can get him and where he pulls away. Well, so while I'm with Alex, Aaron in front tries to make a move on another competitor up front. And unfortunately, there was a hang up, and Aaron and the competitor, they got a little hooked up, and it split them, which was good for the people behind, because not only were we able to pass, but if they would have stopped both sideways in that turn, that could have been bad for a lot of carts basically, but they spread like the Red Sea, and Alex and I had a split decision to make where we were going, and luckily we were both able to go straight and through it and not cause any more of a wreck. Once I was in the clear, I knew Aaron was behind me then again. I was like, okay, he's behind me now. So now I've got Alex to try to figure out in front of me. I've got Aaron behind me to worry about. Like, oh, this is awesome. I love this. And it was really fun to just have I don't know how else to explain it besides just heat of the moment, split decisions that had to be made. And unfortunately, Alex, I wasn't able to pass him, but there were some moments that I could definitely, if I had a few more laps, I knew where I was going to get you at. And we ran some fast times that day. I went back and looked at the numbers. I think I ran a 27:73, I think was the number. And that was the best time I ran the entire weekend. And I was super happy about that. But I couldn't apply it where it needed to be applied and get around Alex. So that stuck us finishing 4th place. And Aaron was right behind me in 5th place. So a really, really great day of racing. And like I said, after the race, I went up and I talked to Aaron just to make sure everything was okay between us. And he actually ended up having a bent axle off of his second incident. And as soon as he spun his wheels and I saw that left just wobbling, my heart sunk because I was like, dude, was that me? Like, I'm so sorry. Can I help out? Is there anything? And he reassured me. He's like, no, it wasn't you. The first pass, the connection between Aaron and I, that was racing. But it wasn't me, rest assured, that caused the bent rim or axle. So I'm very happy about that. Otherwise, I'd have felt absolutely terrible. But regardless, the battle between Aaron and I is so fun. It's so awesome because we are just going back and forth. And I can't express how joyful it is to have that type of competition. And not just that, but, Alex and the rest of the crew and everybody else, Piers, whatever, you're in front, go whatever. But just to be in competition like that is something I wish everybody could get to experience. Knowing that every second, I'm getting worked up just thinking about it. Every decision that has to be made is one of those decisions where, looking back on the film, you can definitely critique and say, oh, no, you should have done this and should have done that. But heat of the moment, when you have to make split decisions that literally come down to a thousandth of a second that can make a difference, it is insane to see what happens and what transpires. And I am so happy to be a part of it. So regardless, super fun weekend. There was a heated moment that I do have to apologize for. On Saturday, I got drove over basically, and some things happened, and I ended up losing my temper in the pits. And for those that saw that, I have to say I'm sorry. That wasn't me. What I'm saying is that the consequences that were put upon me based off of something that I didn't do, even though people saw, I think was what upset me the most. And looking back on it, I wish I would have handled myself a little bit better, because it wasn't even a points race. It was a fun race, but that's just the competitive side of me. And I think after that, it made me realize, hey, this was supposed to be fun, and it needs to be fun. And so I need to basically say, I'm sorry, guys. I lost a little bit of my temper, not nothing too extreme, but for those that were around me, I apologize. That's totally uncalled for. It's not like me. And if something like that happens in the future, I'm not gonna let that happen again. So here's the feature race. Nothing really crazy happened in the heat, so I don't really have any highlights or anything to show about it. So it's just gonna be the feature race. Front camera is gonna be the main focus because there was a lot going on, but the rear camera shows a lot too happening, which is, it's just so cool to have these cameras to show for you guys. So enjoy. We pulled out a 4th place finish. We're going to get there. One of these days, hopefully we'll get up to that 1st place. But until then, we're going to keep pushing, keep moving. We've got 5 more races, I think. So there's still opportunities to be made. So thanks for coming along. Take a look at the race, and we'll see you in the next one.